Hello and welcome back to the next session of, or the next part of the first week of Blender 102, and I was making a list of good geometry versus bad geometry things a minute ago, and I realized there was one thing I forgot to mention. And good geometry will have outward-facing normals. I don't know why I just wanted to write an F there, but there you go. Outward-facing normals. Now, is there anybody listening to the sound of my voice right now who does not know what a polygon normal is? And just, don't be afraid. Just let me know over inside of BuzzNet. I'm just curious. All right, I got at least one person. Okay, no, it's no problem. It's nothing to feel bad about. Every single polygon, they're kind of like coins, really, in a way. They have a positive side and a negative side. The reason that's important to you is that some rendering engines, particularly those that power game engines among several others, can only render the positive side of a polygon. So the normal of a polygon can be considered to be a line, a theoretical line. It's not really there, but you can visualize it if you want to, that points out the positive side of a polygon. And it is always perpendicular to the, it is pointing in the same direction the polygon is facing. So it's perpendicular to the surface of that polygon. You want to make sure these are all facing outward. So if you have, again, the most exciting polygon model in the world, which is a polygon box, you want to make sure that your normals are all pointing outward from that box. Because if they're not, you can end up with shading problems. A game engine may not even be able to see that face, because again, game engines do not render the negative side of polygons, usually. Now, there are some shaders for some game engines that will make that happen. But generally speaking, if this is the camera of a game engine, it will see the positive side of a polygon surface. But if the camera is back here behind it, it will see right through the surface as if it wasn't there. It'll look like there's nothing there. And you may have seen this in a few games before. So that's one of the reasons you have to pay attention to normals. Now the good news is that really while you're working in Blender, as long as you hit Control-N from time to time to recalculate your normals, you're probably good to go. Very rarely will something untoward happen with your normals as long as you're doing that. Is there a way to easily find n-gons on a model? Well, that's a really good question, and I'll definitely look into that. Usually in the manner in which that I model my stuff, I generally know they're there while I'm working, but I will take a look and see if there's some nice, smooth way where you can just say, hey, point out any n-gons I may have. All right, now, let's jump back over to some of the modeling tools that I want you to be aware of. Now, some of these have nothing to do with BMesh. Some of them are just basic modeling tools that, again, I feel are important and will make your modeling operations a lot easier. I'm going to go way out on a limb and imagine that a fairly good chunk of you are already pretty, at least fairly aware of some of these. I guess we could start with him in the screen, but let's not. Let's just go Control-N and put in a brand new scene. Now, I will say this, before we even start taking a look at tools, in Blender, you need to start with some piece of geometry and start modeling off of that. Has anybody in the room ever heard the term box modeling? And pardon me for just a second.
Why would we need to model a box? It presents us with the box when we start it.
Exactly. Well, Saturn was the first person to say yes. So Saturn, can you tell me what box modeling is? I'm going to put you in the hot seat for just a minute and see if you get a cookie.
That'll teach you paying attention.
Modeling using the box as a base. It's exactly right. You just start off with a piece of geometry that happens to be a box, and you extrude or add edges or delete faces or pull vertices around and turn that box into something else. Basically, that box starts off as your initial lump of clay. And that is a very nice way to begin modeling. I create a lot of models that way. It speaks to me. And yes, she gets a cookie, and you don't. Do you know why you don't, Risen Force? Because you didn't speak up. If you'd spoken up, you might have got a cookie. But you see what you got in your hand right now? It's nothing. That's what you got. It's nothing.
The reason I prefer to start with a box than a plane comes back to what you were saying just now about normals.
Mm-hmm.
And making sure if you start with a box, provided you don't do anything dumb, you should keep your normals. I always try to be polite on video, but really, unless you do something dumb, if you start with a box, your normals are pointing outwards on that box.
That's true. And if you work with a plane, you could end up in a situation where you have no idea which direction your normals are pointing. So that's definitely a good point. But let's go ahead and just begin with a box. And I'm just going to demonstrate some of my tools on a box, like so, or a cube, as it were. And we'll go ahead and hit Tab and go into Edit mode. Now, probably one of the most basic modeling operations that you're ever going to use whenever you're modeling is extrusion. You're going to do this a lot, probably. And that's easy inside of Blender. In fact, it's easier in Blender than it is in just about any other application I know of. You just tap the E key and you are extruding. All extruding is you're pulling out new geometry. Basically, you're taking whatever face you had selected or whatever piece of geometry you had selected, and you're moving it away from its initial location, but reattaching it back to its initial location using new geometry. And you see you can just tap that as many times as you want. If you have multiple faces selected and you hit E, they will move out in the direction of their average normal. So basically, it's the average direction that all of those faces were pointing. And that's definitely important to keep in mind. If, however, you have multiple faces selected and you hit Alt+E, you can extrude individual faces and you get this, which is also highly useful. Now, there's a couple of other aspects to extrusion which are easy to overlook but are very, very useful when you need them, and that is the ability to control-click. Now, I do want to point something out about user preferences. And I guess before I really start clicking along inside of Blender, let me turn on my screencast keys so you guys can see any keys that I press, which will be really useful for you guys, I hope. Also, I want to mention under user preferences, and this is just me, this is total personal preference, I have my select width set to left. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but you may have to reverse various mouse keys that I'm using. So if I am clicking left, you may need to click right on some tools. Just thought I'd go ahead and mention that. I use so many applications where left is your primary selection button that I just can't wrap my head around switching over to right. It's silly to me. I've also turned on continuous grab, though that really shouldn't change much for you guys. That just means that if I'm ever using a spinner, I can just keep right on dragging it along. And really, that's about it. Outside of that, I turn on the screencast keys just for your edification. Now, if, again, because I've switched my two mouse buttons around, I can hold down Control and right mouse click, and you do kind of a fast extrusion. Now, that is camera dependent, so the angle at which you have the camera is very important when you do this. So if I'm kind of up here at this above downward diagonal angle, and I start doing that, Control right clicking in my case, you see that we are kind of making a shape which points back to where the camera was previously positioned. So definitely keep that in mind. If you want to do like a control click, but you want things to look nice, definitely consider switching over to an orthographic view. And it will keep things nice and neat for you. So here we now have a nice, perfectly straight extrusion. Or at least it's straight along this one axis anyway. Now that's pretty basic. Everybody's seen extrusion. I do want to mention this though. One of the reasons I love extrusion in Blender probably more than any other modeling tool, including Maya, and everybody out there should know that I'm a huge Maya fan, is the ability to do this. You can take individual vertices and extrude them and create new surfaces like that. You can take an individual vertex, and this is, to me, is just absolutely incredible that you can do this. We can grab one vertex and we can extrude it. We can grab another vertex and extrude it. And then we can switch over to edges and grab these two floating edges and tap F and stretch a new face right in between them, which is very, very cool. So let's take a look at some other tools. Let's kind of get away from extrusion for just a minute. Now I did mention earlier, and I'm just going to remind you guys, that along with each of the primary components that you have access to in Blender, being vertices, edges, and faces, you have a custom menu. So you have Control V, and this has a series of tools. Control E, again, a series of tools. Control F with its own tools. And then finally W for specials. And these all have tools. And you should take a moment and try to acquaint yourself with each one. I think it will really help you out. But let's talk about some of the other tools that I really like. Now, these are in no particular order, okay? These are just I have a big, long list of various tools, and I have a difficult time imparting specific importance to any given tool. But one of the tools that I use more often than just about anything else is the Insert Edge Loop, which is Control R, and hopefully you've all seen that. If you took the 101 class, we actually used that a few times. And here's how it works. You just hit Control R, and you mouse over an edge, and you get the loop that would be inserted if you were to click on that edge. If you roll the mouse wheel, you can increase or decrease the number of edges you are inserting, which I can't even tell you how cool that is.
That is a great little... I was overjoyed when I found that.
Yep. And then if you click the... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say about, don't go mad when you're adding edges. But I suppose that's more into...
Yeah, that's going to be one of those things that comes with experience. It can get really exciting to be like, oh, you know what? I can hit Control R and roll my mouse wheel like up to here and click, and I've just got a million edges, and that makes me really happy. But generally, you won't want to do that. Now,
the big thing for me was being able to divide into equal thirds very easily, and that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you don't want to be doing dozens.
Now, if you click your mouse once, you can slide this edge along and decide exactly where it's going to be placed, which is very handy. If you need it to be in dead center, you can just right-click, and that'll put it right back at the center. So definitely make use of that, because that can really save you, and it can really speed up the modeling process on characters. As long as you have a couple of initial edge loops in place, if you just need to add some new ones and then reposition them. But the positioning of edge loops comes with something else. As a matter of fact, let me go back to recent, and let me open up the Goblin one more time. This comes with another tool that I wanted to show. So here we are at the arm, and I'm going to hit Control R, and we can insert an edge here, and I can choose where it's going to be. But let's say I click, and I decide that was a bad placement, that I wanted to position that edge somewhere else. Well, I can select that edge loop. By the way, the shortcut for selecting an edge loop is to hold down Alt and click on one of its edges, and you'll notice that that's selected the entire loop all the way around the arm. And then you can use Edge Slide. So if you hit Control E, and take a look, you have Edge Slide here. And if you hit this, you can drag that edge back along the surface with a minimal amount of disruption to the shape of that surface. You'll notice it's changing just a little bit there on the bottom, but it is a really nice way to relocate information. And of course, by information, I mean detail on your model. So I can grab two of these guys, hit Control E, Edge Slide, and I can reposition these. And you'll see that it's actually kind of readjusting the sizes of those loops to try to maintain the shape that I originally had, which is very, very useful.
Would that be a good time to mention that really cool spherizing?
Well, that's coming up, yeah. The next one that I mean, we might as well, because again, I'm not really throwing these out in any specific order. But another one that I use a lot, and I really do wish a lot of other applications had this, is the two-sphere function. What two-sphere actually does, and I'll go ahead and kind of draw out a diagram of its purpose before I show it to you, is that it takes a collection of vertices. And let's say I have an edge loop, maybe for a character's arm, because I think I'm about to chop off my goblin's arm. So those of you who have weak stomachs at home who may want to look away, just be aware that I'm about to do something kind of gross here. So it's going to take a selection of vertices, and it's going to grab their midpoint and then calculate a theoretical sphere based on the average distance from that center point of all of these vertices. Then, here's the cool part, it's going to move the vertices to the surface of that sphere. Now, that sounds really, really complicated, but the upshot to it is if you have a hole or a selection of vertices that has some strange oblong shape to it, like so, after you run two-sphere, it will be a much more regular shape, like a rectangle or a square in this case. Or if you have a lot of vertices, it will actually turn into a nice, smooth, perfect circle of vertices.
Just like if each of your edges was a bungee cable.
Oh,
and they're all the same length
I
bungee.
love your examples, Gavin. I really do.
I think that's a good example.
No, go ahead, please. I'm with bated breath. Go ahead.
So, well, if you go back to your whiteboard there,
Oh,
I
yeah,
can't
sure.
see.
I would love to.
Got, say, which is blue, you see.
Yeah.
And you've got your 8 edges there for the one on the right that hasn't got any. If all your bungee cables that you buy them in bulk, they're all identical bungee cables. If you join 8 things together like that, they will stretch equally like that. They're
Yes.
all under. That's what it does from the one to the top left.
Okay.
It stretches. It makes the forces equal. I can start talking about newtons.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Cosine theta against sine theta, producing the tangents.
Yeah, that's a really great, maybe slightly complicated way to look at it, but it does work. Here's a
I spent 3.5 hours in a class with Nelson.
You did a great job.
Completely fried my brain.
I'm going to grab these faces. I'm going to hit B and drag out a selection of faces about like so. Actually, let me hit Z before I do that so I can see through the model. That'll probably be a little more productive in this case. So I grab everything on the arm up to this point, and let's see. If we do P and separate that selection, so we can make that just something else entirely, then I can just grab this guy and that and just move it out here. I'm not even worried about that guy anymore. So here I have a character with a stump for an arm, and for whatever the reason, I want this selection of edges right here to be a nice perfect circle. And this leads us to the 2-sphere command, which I'm madly in love with. You can access this with Alt+S, and then drag your mouse to the right, and it is going to basically spherize all of those vertices and put them in a nice smooth circle. So let me do something to kind of perturb them and make them look a little bit gross. So I'm going to hit scale and we'll squash them down kind of like so. And maybe I'll grab vertices and grab this one vertex and pull it like way out here. And then let's just do that again just to show you how awesome that works. So Alt-Shift-S, and there you go. It really quickly and easily rounded all those guys out. So definitely remember that. Another one that I'm a big fan of, we've already kind of shown this, I'll go ahead and mention it again, is of course remove doubles. That just happens to be on my list. Let's see, what's another really happy one that I like? We've seen loop cut, we've seen separate, which incidentally is the P key. We have the rip feature.
Well,
Go ahead.
Actually, you ought to show join.
Yeah, I guess I should, so I can put the arm back on.
Yeah.
So we have rip, which allows you to select some edges and break them apart, which is great if you need to insert some geometry. That is with the V key. So you can just tap V and split it apart, which is very, very cool. And let's see. Let me just go back to joining real quick. So I'm going to go back out here to object mode. And let's grab these two pieces. And let's just start off just by making these back to a single object, which I'm just going to hit Control J, and that will join these both together so that they're now the same object once again. And let me grab everybody over here. So I'll hit Z so that I can see through my object. I hit B and grab everybody over here, and then I'm so used to Maya. Let me tap G and move this over here. I'm just going to get it close. I'm not going to worry about bombarding with doing snapping stuff right now. We'll just get it pretty much right there. Actually, a little bit of distance will be kind of useful in our case, so I can show a couple of other tools. This will make one of his arms slightly longer than the other, but for our purposes, that will be okay. Because now what I'm going to do is switch over to vertices and show another of my favorite operations, which is Alt+M for merging. And you can merge to center, to first, or to last. And really, that's just based on what you have selected. Or you can merge to the 3D cursor, or you can just collapse, which will just take kind of an average location, which is kind of like at center in this case, because we only have 2. But I'll go ahead and do at center. And if we grab here and here, I'm hitting keys I shouldn't be hitting, apparently. Let's hit Alt+M and at center. Now there is, I believe Control R will repeat the last command. And not just the R key. But honestly, I never use that. So Alt+M at center. Gavin?
Yeah, no, I was just pondering on that because I couldn't remember what it was. I'm sure they said Control R, but
Yeah, I've
that's
never.
the same for.
And I've had people insist to me that that works, and it's never worked on my end. But that could be because of my keyboard, or it could be the fact that I've switched over my mouse buttons or something. But generally, I have all of my user preferences set to default, so it could just be an old hotkey.
Yeah.
Because Blender does change those from time to time. Okay, so there's a few of the more popular modeling tools that I use, and certainly not a list of every single one out there, but enough for you to generally be aware of and kind of get started with. Let's talk about some of the tools that are specific to BMesh, because I feel like that's one of the bigger reasons why we're all here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file.
Oh, and Kevin says it's Shift R.
Oh, is it Shift R? Okay, well, that figures. Matter of fact, if I split that back open and I switch back over to Vertices, and we'll do this first one, and grab these two and Shift R. Yep, it is indeed. Well, there you have it.
Good work, sir.
Indeed. Okay, now I'm going to hit Control N and let's open up a brand new file. Now, there are a few tools that are completely new that only exist because of BMesh, and at the very least, you need to know what these are because they have to do with the new ways in which polygons work. To really show this first one off, though, I need to do some subdivision. So I have all of my faces selected. I'm going to hit W and hit Subdivide, another tool that is very, very useful. And now that we have activated that tool, we can go into its settings and just increase the number of cuts, like so. Now, I'm going to select some faces here. It doesn't really matter how many, it doesn't really matter which ones, I'm just making a selection. That will do just fine, and some sort of strange shape made out of those. Now previously, when we hit the X key, all we really had was the ability to delete various things, but now we also have the ability to dissolve. And what dissolve is going to do is wipe out all of the internal geometry for this selection and make it into a single n-gon. We couldn't do that before, and again, this is what I was talking about earlier, where this gives you the power to completely wipe out the internal detail for a selection and then retrace that detail using the knife tool. Now, of course, that leads me to my next tool, which is, of course, the knife tool. You can access that with the K key, K for knife. You will just click on, well, you can click almost anywhere you want to. Let me be a little more careful about how I use this tool. If we hit K, you can click on a vertex, and you'll see there's a little bit of snapping involved to help you land right on that vertex. There's a little bit of snapping to edges, too, but you don't have to click on either one of those. We can start on a vertex, which you generally should, by the way, but we can make an intricate cut that wraps all the way back around and maybe ends back over here on this vertex. When you're done, press either Enter or the space bar. And there you go. You just made a cut. It's an ugly cut. You generally wouldn't want to do this, but you could. And if we switch over to just faces now, we could grab this face and extrude. There you go. There's a shape that was completely impossible prior to the advent of the n-gon. Is it ugly geometry? Yes, it's ugly geometry, but you can do it.
But if you're making an office block that needs to be approximately that shape, that's the way I'd go about it.
Well, and that's one of the great things about working with n-gons in general. As a matter of fact, let me see how far back along my undos I can walk. There you go. This is about where I want to be. Is that you can just go ahead and cut out exactly what you want something to look like, and then worry about the details of the geometry later. So for instance, I could say, all right, well, I need some sort of arcing kind of shape to be cut out of this block, so let's go ahead. Maybe I'm building something like an engine component, right? So I go ahead and build kind of like my arc, but then it's got a little bit of thickness, and it cuts back to here. And this is exactly what I need this to look like. It's ugly, but maybe this is what I need. And now I can use the knife tool to clean up this geometry now that I've got exactly that shape. And actually, before I even do that, watch. Let's just select faces, and we'll extrude that up. So let's say this is, like, as far as I'm concerned, this is perfect, but I don't really want to leave this n-gon here, and generally I would recommend that you don't. So now we can take all of these stray vertices that we see here, and we can just anchor them to their nearest vertex. So we can anchor this guy over here, Maybe anchor this guy to this corner. Same with this guy. Maybe this guy goes over here. Now this guy, I mean, he's got a cut over here in the middle of this edge. We could grab the knife tool and just cut him straight across over here. And maybe this guy goes straight over here. And this is all back to being a bunch of triangles and quads. There's nothing wrong with this geometry whatsoever. Some of the triangles are a little bit long, but you don't have any n-gons. Well, okay, so I still have one over here. So I gotta, yeah, never mind.
And on the top of the building.
Yeah, but you get the idea. That's really what I'm trying to get across here, is that we made the shape that we needed, and then we just take a minute and clean it up, as opposed to having to start and finish the whole time being restricted specifically to quads and triangles, which I'm not going to speak for everybody, but I always found to be kind of a pain in the butt. I never really liked modeling that way. And I got pretty fast at it.
Interrupt the flow.
I got pretty fast at it, to be fair, but only because I had to practice at it. And now I feel that with BMesh, the modeling process in Blender is significantly more intuitive than it used to be. Because I can just make the shapes that I want and then fix from there. Now, there are some cool things about the knife tool that you need to know. So other than just using K and slicing an object to ribbons, you can use the knife tool and hold down the Control key, and you will snap to the center of an edge. So that's a split perfectly halfway across that face. Also, you can make a split. So start your cut, and then tap the C key, and you will snap to a horizontal, a diagonal, or a vertical line in screen space. So if you know you need a perfectly straight cut across a surface, the workflow for that would be to switch over to probably an orthographic view, and then you can start your cut and hit the C key, and you know that that cut is going to be perfectly straight across the face.
Although this does bring up one thing, and
what's that?
Because of it being a new tool, it can misbehave in ortho view. I think it has problems deciding about Z.
Yeah, it has a depth problem where sometimes it'll think you clicked on an edge that is slightly behind wherever you clicked. The big thing I think to avoid that problem, in my experience, is as you are cutting. And please note that you can cut across multiple edges, so you can just make one cut that goes across all these edges. Keep an eye on that final vertex. See how it looks faded right now? It thinks that I'm cutting as something back in the distance, but as I pull it back and it gets bright and highlighted, I guess,
gotcha.
Then there you go. And then now it's cutting pretty much right where you think it should. And it looks like I missed the first one, but it thought I cut that one back in the background. But at least that does illustrate the point. So just watch where those highlights appear, and I think generally speaking you'll be okay. Okay, so there's the knife tool, and it's amazing, and really, like I was saying earlier, I think you could do an entire model just with the knife tool, really. Just take a box and just start cutting it to bits and pieces. Now, let me move the 3D cursor out here, hit Shift-A, bring in, oh, not a plane. I don't want a plane. Let's bring in another cube. And this allows me to jump over to the pièce de résistance, which we waited for years and years and years and years and years in Blender, and that is the ability to bevel.
Yay!
We can finally bevel. Now, for those of you who are completely new to modeling, beveling is probably more important than you think, because if you take a look at this object, and don't think of this like some polygon box. As a matter of fact, let's just say I come over here and Z, B, nuke all this stuff out. Just goodbye. We don't need you anymore. We're just going to take a look at this box all by himself. The edges of this box are problematic. If you were to make this box in the real world, these edges would be sharper than a razor. They would be down to 1 molecule thick, and you could slice your hand off just by running it along the corner of this box. Such things do not exist in the real world. So if you wanted this box to appear more realistic, especially during a render, what you'd want to do is grab all of your edges and give them a little bit of bevel. Now, when you create a bevel, you have a percentage that you can adjust. And even just the tiniest little bit, like even just right here where we have 0.01, this alone will make all the difference. And you can already see right here in the viewport how that edge is starting to catch a little bit of a specular highlight. And that's all it takes to make that shape look like it's real and something that could exist in the real world. So definitely keep beveling in mind. Now, when you are beveling, you are not restricted to having to bevel everything at once. There is a bevel modifier for that sort of thing. If you want, you can select a single edge and just bevel that. And the great thing about doing this is that you can start stacking your bevels. So we can hit W and bevel again, and then pull this percentage down a little bit, and maybe W and bevel one more time and pull this percentage down, and we have a nice rounded edge. Now, at this time, for those of you who are curious about it, you cannot have a multi-iteration bevel, meaning I can't make a single bevel where I can want it to bevel a whole lot of times and make a nice rounded look, as you may be used to in other applications, such as Maya or 3ds Max. But they do say that that is coming soon, because this is a tool set that is constantly in development. Now, I want to point something out to you as to how bevel can really change the shape of something. I'm going to come over here to modifiers and drop on a subdivision surface, and we'll go ahead and kick up the subdivisions in the view. And I'm going to get into object mode and tap smooth, so everything looks really nice and pretty. Now, I'm going to grab all of those edges and let's bevel those. And then I'll pull down my percentage and take a look at the difference now. We end up...
You're at 0.
I'm at 0? Oh, well, I'm close. Yeah, but still, those are still stacked edges. So if I undo that and bevel once again... Just drag that down.
Sorry, I thought it was going to cause you problems, but...
Well, I mean, technically it is stacked geometry.
I'm that anal.
Yeah, you are. You know, it's okay, though. But see, this gives us a nice rounded block. So if you're looking for a nice rounded brick, there's a nice way to go about doing that. Just bevel out an object and smooth it out. Now, Go ahead.
Sorry. No, incidentally, if you decided, say you were modeling a die, and you wanted them sharper than that, and you simply couldn't move them any closer up, the best, I would suggest the easiest way to solve that problem would be to add a single edge. Well, no, a single edge in each direction.
Yeah. Oh, well, here's maybe what I would do in that case.
Do you know what I mean?
I think I do.
3 loops.
I think I do, but here, get a load of this. Maybe this will work, and maybe it'll blow up in my face. Either way, it should be entertaining, right? Let's grab all of our faces, and then I'll deselect the primary faces of the cube. I don't think I left anybody behind. And then let's just try subdividing those. And that should be nicely sharpened now.
It actually did.
So let me go back out.
It did the major faces anyway.
Well, I think because it had to. It had to branch those across.
Oh, I wish I'd thought of that.
But see, now there you go. But there's a really sharp, but still partially rounded block. Yeah, I wish you had thought of that on Tuesday. I don't know. Maybe you were just slacking that day.
The ironic thing is that I was just aiming for the major ones that it's done. The ones that it did.
I think
despite you
again, that's because
it
kind of had to. Because it had to bridge across those.
Well, I was getting at that idea that rather than adding lots of detail to the detailed area, just add a single loop. Mm-hmm. Will cause it to be tighter because
right, and it should exactly because there's some more geometry to push it around. Okay,
sorry, probably more next week. So sorry.
No problem at all. Okay, another tool that is new with the advent of BMesh is insetting faces. And this allows you to, it's kind of like making an extrusion that doesn't really go anywhere and just gets bigger or smaller. So I can increase the thickness, and you see it's just making a little inset copy, like so. We can switch that to outset, and you can see what it's done. It's kind of stretching out from the surface, which isn't particularly useful in this case, but it does look interesting. So we'll go ahead and leave that at just a regular inset. And so now I can extrude from there. Let me grab just that one face and hit E, and you can extrude that. Like so, and then maybe do another inset, so hit W, and I think I hit bevel there, but let's instead, and I'll carry it away with my hotkeys, so let's do another inset face, increase our thickness, maybe just grab this guy and extrude that back in, and there you go.
Nice.
Now, the only other tool that I want to, or I guess there's a couple of little things I could go ahead and mention that in some ways I'm sure I already have, but in case you missed it for any reason, if you need geometry in a certain area, please remember to use the F key to just fill that in. So let's see, if I grab here and then here and hit F, that'll just nicely fill that for us. It will do that and produce an n-gon if you have multiple edges. In this case, of course, it's only a 4-sided face, but if we had something with like 8 faces and we did that, it will fill that in with a single n-gon, which is very, very useful these days. We also have the ability to bridge polygons. So let's see here, a nice way to demo that, I suppose, would be to come in here to faces, and let's see, I can delete this out, and I'll delete all of these guys out. And that looks pretty good. Actually, do you have something, Gav? You unmuted.
No, I'm just pondering, are people really just saying absolutely nothing in BuzzNet?
Yeah.
Flash just thought the same thing.
Yeah.
He just hit test.
Yeah,
that's right, it is working.
Yeah, BuzzNet is really, really quiet tonight. I think people are just really watching very intently and not doing too much chatter, which is fine with me. But yeah, there is usually so much chatter in BuzzNet that I have more than once
become unnerving.
Yeah, I have more than once thought that things were broken. So let me switch over to edges real quick, and we can grab edges, and we have the ability to bridge, which I think that's also under W. Yeah, bridge to edge loops. So let's just go ahead and grab a loop and a loop. I'll hold down shift so we can get both the loops and bridge those. And it did a little bit of twisting there, which looks pretty disgusting. So usually whenever a bridge operation does something like that for me, I will bridge them one at a time. So we'll create a bridge like so, and then...
Or at least get one...
Yeah, get one kind of started.
If you've got one edged in there, it's...
Then generally it works much more smoothly.
Max is legendarily poor. It guaranteeably is off by one.
And even in this case, and this could be for any number of reasons.
I think you've got non-manifold geometry in there, or you're trying to cause it.
Well,
you've missed
I may. Let me go ahead and kill off my smooth and see if Gavin is correct, or if I get to say, no, you're wrong. No, you're right. Maybe. No, you're wrong. Haha. Looks good to me. Anyway, let me just go ahead and bridge again. It looks fine from here.
Yeah, I couldn't. That's something weird.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I don't see any weirdness going on with the geometry. It could be normals pointing in different directions, or it could just be that the tool is still kind of in beta. So if I ran into something like this, but I knew I had to connect these, just extrude, switch back over to vertices, grab U and U, Alt+M, and go to last. Grab U, and Shift R, and there you go. And then we can just switch back over to edges, grab U and U, W, oh, I'll not do that. Control Z. So U and bridge, and still doing it. So again, I would just grab it.
It's a normals.
Yep.
Is it a normals?
It's. I'm not sure. I don't think the normals should be giving me.
Try to remove doubles.
Yeah, I will here in just a second.
Sorry, I've turned into Jason Hurley.
No, it's okay. No worries.
Do this.
And there you go.
Sweet.
So we'll tap everybody and just W, remove doubles, see if we had any. Remove 0, so meh.
Control N?
Well,
something's got to be wrong for it to be doing that.
I mean, I would like to think so, but I mean, I just don't know for sure. And either way, there's a real quick and easy way to get around it. So we can turn all this back on, and you see everything is all still smooth and very, very cool looking and stretchy. So that's it for the bulk of the tools. Now, we do not have much time left, ladies and jelly spoons. And really, I'm running very short on the ability to talk. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to spend the last few minutes of class
speed modeling.
Doing a little bit of speed modeling. So let's see. Generally, I like to think of the y-axis as being the forward axis. So I'm going to start with a box, about like so. And I've been drinking water all night. It's not water. It's down in my esophagus, and it's very difficult for me to to concentrate and not just start coughing in everybody's ears. I really do feel kind of bad about it, but the class is definitely going to carry on for its full allotted time, and I didn't have to cancel, so I feel pretty good about that. Now, one thing I do like to keep in mind when modeling anything, and that's when it's via a box or when I'm making my own geometry, whatever I happen to be creating, is definitely try to make the most of the geometry that you have before you add anything. See if you can create a shape that speaks to you. Now, I'm not going to tell you guys what I'm modeling. That would be no fun. You'll catch on here very shortly. Let me start off by...
I think they already know.
No, but they don't know specifically. They know the gist,
Uh,
but I'm not modeling the same thing I did in the last class, so there.
uh.
How does that grab you? Anybody who guessed an ant, you're wrong. So Now, if you guessed an insect, then your guess was too general and you fail, and I'm never giving you a cookie ever again.
Actually, I said it was too specific earlier when people were talking about this because they looked at the homework thread.
Yeah, I'm not going to do an ant. Okay, now let me go ahead and jump on a modifier, and we'll put on a mirror, and I'll go ahead and turn on clipping because that makes me happy. And let's see here. Control R.
Well, it looks like you're starting with the head to me.
I probably am. So, do you know of any insects?
Did you want to turn your screencast keys on?
No, but I will. I do really like the ability to just drag vertices around in Blender. It does make me very, very happy.
Guess what?
What?
I really.
So what?
I think I just need to give it more of a chance.
Oh, do you hate it?
No. Yes.
Yeah, I sense hatred in your tone.
There's a lot to like about Blender. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the willful way that, like the fact that they've only just admitted that nobody really wants to right click. Or no, Turntable's a better example.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Let's do a knife here. Click.
It took them until what was it last year to finally admit that people really get very ill if they try and model without Turntable turned on.
Yeah, and they buckled, and now we have Turntable as a default, and that's good. By the way, if anything I'm doing here makes you want to ask a question, please ask a question. I am just kind of working away and clicking on. So I'm only using tools that we've demonstrated so far, so I just use the knife tool to kind of shape out a little hole in the back of my character. And hopefully if you all made it through the 101 class, you've already seen how to apply a mirror modifier and how that can save you a little bit of modeling time, so that would be good. We could also go ahead and jump over here and put on a subdivision surface modifier and kick up its iterations a couple of times.
Is it grasshopper?
It's not a grasshopper. In fact, I need to spend a little bit less time on the body, so to speak. So let's do this. Just so it's nice and fast, I'll come up here, make sure that my 3D cursor is at 0 in X, because that's important. And Shift A, actually, thinking, yeah, let me put this guy out here, actually. Shift A, add a cube. So this is like dual box modeling.
I thought you were going to do an ISO sphere, and then...
Blah. Blasphemy. I don't know why I'd spend that much extra geometry. Geometry with no flow. I don't like the flow of the icosphere.
I didn't think you were going to I thought you were going to, like, further down the body or up the body.
And then just smash those together. And
boom.
There you go. So that's fast. Stretch that out a little bit. Switch over to edges and pull these around. I got a little bit skewed, but that's okay. We don't really care. You can always... And it's just vertices. And this is just modeling. You're always just going to be kind of wiggling vertices around.
Can I do my whole spiel?
I was really kind of setting you up, hoping that you would, Gavin. I thought for a minute that the night was going to go by, and you weren't going to do it, and I got frightened. I'm not going to lie. I was terrified.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to know that someone was paying attention enough to know that the number of questions you see on the forum, not so much nowadays, I suppose, but I've seen them over the years of, oh, this tool doesn't do what it shouldn't, or why isn't this tool in this particular application? Modeling, this is modeling. Moving verts around, adding some more verts, moving those around. This is it. and there is no.
I'm about to get.
The rest of it's just cake.
I'm about to get misty-eyed. I mean, every time I hear that speech, it's always so moving. And then he shut up.
I'm going to sing the doom sound now.
Mm-hmm. Let me not do that. Let's actually cut this guy out to here. And cut this guy out to here. You guys might have noticed a certain pattern with the way that I model when I'm in a rush. And that is just get some geometry down. First and foremost. Make the geometry. Make the geometry pretty later. Just rearrange it later. Don't worry about making it pretty right away. Just make the geometry. Get it there. Because we can always switch over to vertices and use Blender's absolutely fantastic ability to just drag vertices around. As a matter of fact, I hit Control Spacebar to put my stupid gizmo away. And then I can just start arranging these guys however I want to. And let's turn this on and see how this looks smooth. The flow to this is just god-awful, though. I've really got to spend a little bit of time kind of cleaning this up.
See, once I start with my one box and it's turned into something octagonal, I'm much more, as every model starts that way in some direction. And then I'm more of an extrude and scale.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, see...
For organics.
Right. And, I mean, in this case, we have an object. We have a character, or a creature, if you will, with a 3-segmented body. The gap between the segments is actually quite minimal. I probably could have gone ahead and just merged these, and then just added another bit of an edge there to just make it look like it's pinched. Which would have been really, really cool. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can do this. This might work out really well. Let's grab edges. And if I grab this guy and hit Control E and I do an edge slide and bring that really, really close and then just see what that looks like when smooth, we get some nice pinching. And that's kind of really what I'm going for there, is some nice pinching.
Ooh, random tip that I found over time, which is if you've got an edge, say there, you wanted the edge where it originally was, but the actual flow was quite bad. Do an edge slide like that and then edge slide back to where you were.
You can.
The nature of the algorithm will adjust it slightly.
Right.
And it can be helpful.
Mm-hmm. It can do that. Also, keep things like to sphere in mind. So Alt-Shift-S. And that can sometimes, well, in this case, it's being a little stupid because we only have half of a loop. We don't have a whole loop. So that's definitely, that sucks. But just push that down.
I suppose what we're getting at is it's kind of horses for courses how you approach getting the verts in the right place.
Yep.
And the way I was talking about extruding and scaling, extruding is, unless I'm mistaken, that's how you did it on Tuesday.
It may have been.
It's whatever you happen to be doing.
From one model to the next, I really don't know. It's just kind of how they work out.
And actually, if you're doing 2 different models of the same type back to back like you are right now, I've done that before and just gone, I'm going to do it this way for a change.
Yeah, just kind of to satisfy yourself, really. Stretch that out. And then, I mean, we could do an extrusion, I suppose. And wow, he got...
Oh, you're doing a dragonfly?
You could, and that would be a really nice example.
See,
that's not what I had in mind.
To.
Yeah, that's not what I had in mind, but I mean, you really could start a dragonfly out like this rather well. No, actually...
That's why I was slightly disconnected earlier.
I'll go ahead and spill the beans. What I'm working on, what I have a picture of right here in front of me, is a wasp. And so we have the head and the center of the thorax, and of course now I'm building the back of the body. And I do a lot of turn on the smooth and then turn it off. And so maybe we just grab like an edge loop and put it like right about there and leave it pinched really tight. And then grab another one and drag it about here, because you need that kind of pinched in spot there at the body.
Yeah, before the big sort of
where the
curvy,
everything kind of gets all bulbous. So when we'll pinch that off as well, and probably take a minute and clean that up.
Just in case for your reference, because I know you've got somewhere to be.
I have, yeah.
VR right on.
I know. I'm about to kind of wrap this up. I just wanted to get something for a quick body in place, if I could, if I had the time for it, and if I didn't, I'm kind of making it and pretending like I have the time when I really don't. Control R, grab here, and then just get this in place and scale it up. And then what I would probably do back here is grab...
What the end up?
Well, I don't know. I kind of want to switch over to edges. So Control-Tab E. Grab these guys, and... Well, it's just not... It doesn't look very good. Maybe I should just grab vertices and clean it up a little bit. I need this to be a little more spherical, a little more circular... And it doesn't have to be perfect, but something. And then switch over to a side view that is orthographic. Grab that face, and let me just see how this works. If I Control right-click and scale that down, and Control right-click and scale that down. As a matter of fact, now that I've done that, we've got that kind of started. We can grab this edge here and scale that up. We have vertices to play with here. Vertices to play with here. All of this needs to be kind of brought in, obviously. More toward a point, because this thing's going to have a stinger. Pull this down very slightly. Let's turn on our smooth. Oh, look at that.
Nice.
I mean, and the topology still needs some work and some adjustment to make everything seem to flow nicely. But again, this is when I'm in a rush and I know I need a model done yesterday, and I'm given no time to work on it. This is generally the way I will approach it, where I will just start slapping down some geometry, and then reposition it and finalize it later on. Like right now, this whole back end is just a little bit small, and this little pinched in area here is a little bit too big. So like what I would want to do right now is add 2 new edge loops right here, and then immediately start to scale those down. I can grab this guy and this guy together, and I can scale those in as well and start to kind of pinch everything. And then, I mean, if I needed to get rid of those edges at some point, I mean, I can do that. Grab you and you specifically and scale these up a little bit.
Maybe you could just grab the whole end chunk.
Yeah.
And do a proportional scale.
And maybe just kind of move that out a little bit to elongate it. Control R here, click G, and make a little bit more of an arch to the whole thing. So you kind of see how it's coming along. And now somebody just said, when do you box model? When do you sculpt? I wouldn't sculpt this until I got really, really, really done. Now somebody said, when do you model? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm reading the question in 2 different locations. Is there when do you model and when do you sculpt? I would only sculpt this if I actually saved the smooth version down. I wouldn't sculpt on all of this stuff. Now I've been known to, if I need to smooth just a few vertices out and I don't want to move them by hand, but generally I would save sculpting for a much higher resolution mesh, and this would be very, very lightweight in terms of not many faces. Now folks, I realize that this isn't as far along as I wanted to get, but the class has gone on now for a couple of hours, and we've seen a whole bunch of tools. If you want, you can take a look at the end of last Tuesday's class, where I get a little bit further in the modeling process. But this does bring me to your homework assignment, which I don't want anybody to really stress over, because it's really more of an assessment of where we are and what I have to work with. Don't be nervous about it. Just tackle it as best you're able and have some fun with it.
You could just bring up the thread if
I could, actually. In fact, that might be a faster and more intuitive way to demonstrate the homework to everybody. Yeah, I have more PMs. That's great. I always have PMs. Let's see. Blender 102. That's the registration thread. Don't click that. Week 1 homework. Haha! So here it is. You are going to model an insect or arachnid, basically what I was doing. But pick your own. If you want to do a wasp, you can. I hardly even got mine started. But make me an insect. Or if you want to do a spider or a tick or something, of course you can. Don't worry about texture at all. When you're finished, save out your blend file, and you will submit it using our submission guidelines. The PM for setting up your Dropbox must be taken care of before Tuesday the 26th, and your homework must be submitted by Thursday the 28th at 7 p.m., and all of our times are in Central Daylight Time. So if you need to convert that to whatever your time zone is, please feel free to do that. Please only do real insects and real arachnids. Please don't make one up. But, I mean, if you want to do something really cool like a dragonfly.
Yes, no robots.
Yeah, no android. And I don't want to see like a half spider, half dragonfly. It's cool looking. I've done one, actually. But that's not what I'm looking for here. So please, the big thing here is I want you to enjoy yourselves. I want you to explore some of these tools we've talked about. Keep some of the things we've talked about in terms of geometry and modeling in mind as you do this. But again, think of this as sort of a way to tell me sort of where you are. So there's nothing you should be really worried or nervous about. Play it by ear and make it look right. I'm not really worried about bringing in image planes or anything like that. We will be taking care of that with the character modeling. But for now, just, again, have fun with this. So that's going to wrap up tonight's lecture. I hope you guys all have an enjoyable weekend, and I will talk to you all next week. Take care.
Bye, guys.